My cradle was Linares, one of the wealthiest Andalusian villages, if not the prettiest and more picturesque. The greater part of the soil from the surrounding territory has been slowly removed during centuries of mining, but the mineral vapor exhaled from the earth hasn't metallized its inhabitants, who are generous and quick-minded. I was born in the house number 74 of Cordoba Street. Next to it, as a preordination of my destiny, there was a guitar shop. A few weeks after my birth, my parents took me to Jaén, the capital of that region. I spent there the first 2 years of my life, which my memory fails to recall. But what I well remember is the painful day my mother left me in the home of my childless aunt and uncle, Maria and Eduardo. When I was separated from the living cradle of my mother's arms, I cried with deep sorrow. My uncle, completely bald, toothless, and heavily bearded, but always with an expression of generosity in his countenance, sat in front of me, pretending to strum an imaginary guitar, humming this folk song. El tocar la guitarra, no tiene esencia, sino fuerza en el brazo, permanecencia. That means to play the guitar does not require any science, but strength in the arms and perseverance. Time and again he repeated this tune until I calmed down and smiled. Taking then my little right arm, he rhythmed with it the downbeat of hum. I felt such an intense and mysterious pleasure that still I remember it. This was the first seed that fell into the musical soil of my soul, which was later to become the most enduring tree of my life. My uncle noticed my early inclination for music, and he decided, when I was 6 years old, to call a local musician to teach me the solfeggio. This teacher used to pinch my arm every time I made a mistake in my singing the Sol Re Mi. I soon began to be afraid of him and to hate what he was teaching me. By his rough temper, he could have deviated my artistic destiny. I came into existence in Linares. In Granada, I opened my eyes to the beauty of nature and art. Many civilizations, the Moorish above all, left in Granada magnificent testimonies of their former sway. The beauty of those monuments are forever enhanced by the natural splendor of the surrounding countryside, which lifts itself in gentle hills or stretches out toward the horizon, the lazy expanse of its plains. The lofty peaks of the distant Sierra Nevada watch over Granada and send its cold breath as though to temper its ardor. River and brook spring from its melted snows. The Arabs knew how to use this richness, for with it they not only fertilized the soil to make it bring forth plants and flowers, but gave to Granada a murmuring soul which can be heard singing gently in the night. The rippling voice of the water sounds everywhere in Granada, but in no respect more melodiously than in the woods of the Alhambra, where it harmonized with the passionate song of the nightingale. When I was a boy, I used to spend hours there, listening in ecstasy My whole soul was resonant with music, but in Granada at that time there were no good teachers to direct my interest toward any other instrument accepted in the concert hall. I tried the piano, but those who played it were so mediocre that the instrument became, in the phrase later penned by a humorous poet, a rectangular monster which is made to scream when its teeth are drilled. I have not better luck with the violin or the cello, but the guitar, sweet and persuasive, even in the rough hands of the people, attracted and captivated me. I sought the company of the best flamenco players, and little by little I had to impose on myself the severe task of unlearning what they had taught me, as the conviction grew in my spirit that such a beautiful instrument must surely possess a literature as vast, noble, and time-honored as that of any other. After long searching, my friends helped me in finding a few studies and pieces by Arcas, Sol, Aguado, Giuliani, Carcassi, and Tárrega. With the scanty notions of solfeggio, which I possessed at that time, I could hardly read the music I had found, so I patiently applied myself to the task of improving my knowledge. As I had to fight against the opposition of my family, there was no question of a teacher, a school, or any other of the usual methods of instruction. Secretly, I studied when everyone was asleep. With unremitting effort, I taught myself to be a fair sight reader, and thus I began my self-instruction. From that time forward, I was my own teacher and pupil, in a comradeship so firm and persevering that the most trying incidents of my life served only to strengthen the union. A neighboring family discovered my passion for music and undertook to foster it. I continued my school studies, and almost every day I asked permission of my uncle to do my homework in the neighbor's garden, where the trees grew in greater number. When he let me go, I would shut myself up in a tiny room in the house of my benefactor, where I kept a poor guitar bought at the workshop of Benito Ferrer with the money I had saved by not spending it for afternoon snacks, theater, and so forth. The slow training of my fingers to make them capable of molding into sound the notes written on a page, and the satisfaction of hearing finally the melodic and harmonic coordination which resulted from my laborious reading was for me like taking part in a festival of the gods. Time flew, and I was warned of its flight by Eloisa, a girl older than I, but keenly sensitive to the fervor and the strength of my vocation. Little by little, she advanced the time of her warning, and I delayed the hour of my departure until she had convinced herself that my youthful heart was receptive to the warmth of natural affection as it was to the influence of art. This was my first sentimental lesson. My teacher was 23 years old, and I less than 12. Time went by, and my aunt and uncle, who had almost brought me up, died. The guitar then began seriously to occupy the greater part of my time, even though the idea that I might dedicate my life to it professionally had not yet taken shape in my mind. I lived at that time with my grandmother in one of those delightful houses set in the midst of a garden that the people of Granada called a Carmen. It was in the Albaicin, and from the window of my bedroom I could see the profile of the Alhambra. On hot nights in the spring, I would spend hours there in quiet contemplation. One day, a fascinating book fell into my hands, Granada la Bella by Ángel Ganivet. I wanted to learn about his life and premature death. So an old friend of mine introduced me in the house of some of Ganivet's relatives. I praised with such an enthusiasm the author's ideas that the whole family took me to their heart. The daughter, named Encarnación, was a typical Andaluza. Graceful, pretty, and vivacious, she seemed to have a bird's nest in her heart, and her eyes were always sparkling with impish good spirits. I was surprised when, in the course of the first evening, Encarnación played the guitar. A few minutes later, I took the instrument and I also played. The music linked our two hearts, as a tie links two notes of music. When I said goodbye that night, I pressed her hand a little harder than one usually does and waited. A current of fire ran up my arm as I felt Encarnación softly responding to my pressure. From that night I swore a new devotion to Ángel Ganivet. We loved each other dearly, even though the skies of our affection were often stormy. She was 8 years older than I, and this difference disturbed her. But it was Encarnación who made the first prophecy about my future as an artist, and although I did not share such a glowing anticipation, I liked to hear her speak to me about it. Feminine voices haven't always brought me mysterious predictions of my destiny. Encarnación was finally won over by the fears of her family, and we broke off our relations. I decided, however, to play her a serenade before I departed for Cordoba. At 2 in the morning, I sat down beneath her balcony, and in the white silence of the winter moonlight, my guitar began to sound. I played sadly, fixing my eyes on the closed shutters of her window. After 3 or 4 pieces, just as I was waiting, shaken by emotion for the face of Encarnación to appear, the irritated voice of a poor sleepless neighbor cried out impatiently, "Will you be so good as to finish tuning your guitar and then play something cheerful?" I was taken to the local Centro Artístico, and there I made friendships with sculptors, painters, journalists, and musicians. I discontinued my regular studies for my degrees. Any sensible person would have thought that my present was not free from reproach or my future from danger. My own grandmother shared the alarm and worry of the others. She would exclaim in consternation, "Andrés spends the whole day playing on the guitar, tiki 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 tiki, for himself or for his friends." The small legacy left by my uncle was soon exhausted, and my grandmother and I had to separate. She went to Malaga and I joined my mother in Cordoba. It was difficult to accustom myself to my own family's way of living. So, after a few months, I rented a small room to which I transferred all my worldly goods: a bed, a table, 2 chairs, my guitar, my music, and my books. A guitar amateur and jealous guardian of number of manuscripts of Targa opened his treasure to me. Thanks to him, I increased my repertoire, and also the new works I found inspired me to intensify my studies of technique. Out of each difficult passage, I made a new exercise. Often I ceased to regard the motif I had chosen as part of a specific work and elevated it to a superior level of studies, in which was later the promise of victory over more general difficulties. When I was tired of working or reading, I would go out for a walk through the city. Gradually, I acquainted myself with its many beauties of Roman, Christian, and Arab origin. Cordoba showed that life has made of it a backwater. Everything is quiet, poetic, and deep. Except for the principal thoroughfares, the streets are narrow and winding. The houses are built close together like old women who help each other to support the weight of centuries. Often, through the grilled doorways, I could catch a glimpse of patios so beautiful and spacious, so full of plants, flowers, birds, and fountains, that they were like the gardens of paradise. Sometimes they were even peopled by the houris that the prophet promised to the faithful. All good Cordobans, now as in the time of Seneca, give expression to their thoughts in a concise form. A famous bullfighter of our days was asked, "Who do you think is the greatest bullfighter that ever lived?" "The best myself," he answered. "After me, nobody. After nobody, Fraquelo," pointing to the other bullfighter who was present. Another noble Cordoban received, nearly 2,000 years ago, a young Roman that requested his protection. He spoke so much about himself that the patrician restrained his loquacity with a gesture and said, "Be silent, young man, for I want to know you." I eagerly hope that the narration of this fragment of my early youth did not strain your attention too much. Probably you may also wish to restrain my loquacity, but I have tried to describe how destiny likes to put impediments of many sorts at the beginning of an artist's career, maybe with the wise purpose to invigorate his will, to strengthen his character, to fortify his muscle for ascending without being disheartened the steep path to success. For the benefit of guitar students, I will now play some exercises that I continue to practice from that remote period of my life. These are legatos for the left hand. They should be played on every string, ascending and descending gradually. more legatos for the left hand in every key, major and minor. Now chromatic octaves for the independence of the fingers of the left hand. Play them first slowly, then fast. Diatonic scales in every key, first slowly, then rapidly. Now arpeggios. The students may apply to the following chord all exercises by Mauro Giuliani for the right hand.